Welcome back to Filmonomics as Slated. I'm Steph Paterno, and for those of you who saw the last segment, we talked a lot about data and its impact on the predictability of films. Now, for any artist, whether you be a director or a writer or a producer or anyone in a creative field of entertainment, you associate data with formulaic movies, predictable movies. Data is the enemy. Well, we asked this of a couple of our panelists who are both experts in data and analytics and the predictability of film. Let's go hear what they had to say. Their answers may surprise you.
First, I challenge that person to tell me and give me an original movie. I tell them to go back to the idea of archetypes and how there are a certain number of narratives and stories. I tell them to look at Bachelor Party and tell me that that's not Hangover, and that there aren't stories before that. I've done, let's say, 3,000 screenings over the past 12 years. Now, and I gave this example before. Every time, let's say a horror movie. Now, horror movies can be either killer or haunting. There's nothing else. Horror movies either feature killers or supernatural. There's no other options. If you have killers, you can have multiple killers. You can have killers that are creatures. You can have all different types of killers. But let's just say you have multiple killers, right? 2 or more killers in your horror movie. Every time those killers have a motive, whether it is to harvest your organs, think Turistas, or it's to hold you hostage, or it's to get revenge of some reason, the audience classifies the movie as a suspense thriller and the fear isn't real. If every time the motive is there is no motive, they're just insane and they want to kill you because you're there, think The Strangers, then they classify it as a horror movie, and then all of a sudden audience appreciation goes up. Psychologically, there's a reason for that. You put yourself in the shoes of the victim in a narrative. And if you think that you're in the shoes of the victim and the killers have a motive, you think you can talk your way out of it because we all have huge egos and we think we can do that, right? I can find the money, I can talk. But if the killer is just wants to kill you because you're there, that's where the fear comes from. And when we see 9 out of 9 times, no matter what the execution, no matter what the movie, every time the killer has a motive, the audience rates it lower, and it's a suspense thriller no matter who stars in it. And every time they don't have a motive, the fear goes up and the ratings go up. And I have a script. Well, it becomes a no-brainer at that point. Is that making it formulaic? Or is that, hey, at the very psychological base of us, this is the narrative that resonates. Don't try to remake their narrative wheel. This is an archetype, and archetypes are there for a reason it works. One of the greatest movies of all time, Star Wars, was built completely off of Joseph Campbell's archetypes. And that's essentially what we're measuring.
Yeah, I mean, what we need to remember is that movies are made for audiences, right? So that always needs to be kept in mind. What does the audience want to see? I mean, I know as an artist sometimes that's not something you want to admit, but it's not just would I want to see this, it's do I think other people would be interested in this concept? Now, to build off of what Vinny was saying, now a lot of times, unfortunately, a script isn't tested that early in the process, and let's say a horror movie gets made and there is a killer with motivation.
You're next.
You're next. Our job would be to come in after production is over and basically say, how can we design this marketing campaign? How can we design an ad? How can we design a trailer? How can we design the print to make it look like the killer has no motive? And that's what we do. And so a lot of times you're stuck in this pickle where you didn't do the work at the beginning, and we come in later and we try to clean it up. And a lot of creatives will be upset about that. They say, well, you're changing the whole message of my movie. Well, if we didn't, nobody would come on opening weekend. And the thing about the horror genre in particular is it relies 100% on opening weekend. Maybe once every 10 years, you'll see a horror movie open small and then perform well over the next 10 to 12 weeks. So unless we work on that message and cater it to what the audience wants to see, even if it's not completely accurate, that's what we need to do.
You know, we do find that most good stories, most good narratives, the archetypes exist. And I'll go back to District 9, for example. What is District, District 9, everyone thinks is a very original movie. It's from the point of view of the alien. It's a doc within a doc. But essentially, it's an oppressor who begins to identify with those that he oppresses, eventually becomes one of them and fights on their side, which sounds a lot like Pocahontas, right? Which is the archetype. And if you do it right, Avatar, if you do it right, it works, right? So the trick is finding the narrative archetype in there. But unfortunately, there are some that, conceptually, the archetype is there, where we're going to do an R-rated comedy about a bunch of people on a crazy weekend, but the narrative isn't there, the execution of it isn't there, and that actually becomes even more problematic. But what we found looking at the data and looking at these trends over and over again is hundreds of these archetypes exist, and we're not even conscious of them. They just register for us. If someone goes down a rabbit hole, that character has to want to come back home. And if they don't want to come back home, we as an audience have a problem with it because that's not what they're supposed to do. I'm going to give an example of 3 movies: The Changeling, Cinderella Man, and Imitation Game. All 3 star a top-level actor or actress in it. You have Angelina Jolie, Benedict Cumberbatch, and Russell Crowe. All are biopics about someone who the audience did not really know anything about before the movie came out, right? I mean, most people did not know Alan Turing or anything about the case that Changeling followed or the boxer in Cinderella Man. So if you have a biopic about someone that the audience doesn't know about, you have to do only one of 2 things that will make money for you, which is you either had to inspire people or you had to tell them about something these people did that changed the world you live in and impact your daily lives. 2 of the 3 of them did that: Imitation Game and Cinderella Man. Cinderella Man inspired you. Imitation Game educated you about a person who changed your world. Changeling was a great movie, but it does not. You walk out depressed. It does not inspire you. It does not tell you you should go see The Changeling to someone, and it does not tell you that it changed the world. It's very predictable to say The Changeling would not have made money at an early stage. But again, that's a passion project, right? It follows an archetype, but it misses one. It didn't inspire or give you an education about changing the world, but Angelina Jolie wanted to make it. So what are you going to do?
The key is, even if you don't have the money, it's very easy to do your homework now. You go into Box Office Mojo and you look up the genre that you think your film fits the best. And it has box office opening weekend total gross for every movie released over the last 30 years. Go on there, pull about 10 movies from the last 5 years that you think are most similar to your film. Because as much as we want to think that we're original, something is always similar to something else. So go up there, look the last 10 movies that came out in the last 5 years that are similar to your film. Look at the low range, look at the high range, and then that's where you can set some realistic expectations. Okay, the range here is $10 to $30 million. So I can't go in and try to pitch this $10 million movie because then marketing is going to be another $10 million. They're never going to, your financiers or the studio, they're never going to see where they're going to make any money. So knowing what your range is, allows you to kind of, all right, I'm going to adjust my story like this so that I can make it maybe a little cheaper. Or, maybe I don't have room for Tom Cruise in this movie. Maybe I need to go with unknowns. If that's the case, well, now the budget needs to be a little smaller. That can help you early on just to make it look educated to a studio or to a producer when you say, well, I know that movies typically make this amount of money, and you look smarter.
The bottom line is, as original as a movie may appear to be that might be at the theater right now, it has actually been following the fundamental rules of storytelling that were laid down over 2,500 years ago by the Greeks. And as Pablo Picasso has said, learn the rules like a pro so that you can break them like an artist. Those rules are guidelines to truly free your creative possibilities. And as you may have noticed, if you've logged on to Slated recently, we have just begun to roll out the very tools we've been talking about: script analysis and financial analysis, so that you can now go and market yourself like a pro and free yourself up to be a great artist. So log on and check them out. And until then, we look forward to seeing you on the next segment. Don't forget to subscribe.